Should rock and roll music have a soundstage? That's an interesting question, and one that comes from Dan in Pickerington, Ohio. Paul, I've been greatly intrigued by the topic of creating a soundstage and imaging. I really don't listen to classical music. I mostly listen to rock and roll and alternative music. My question is, does a soundstage exist in these types of music? It would seem that this type of music was recorded in a studio and the music is mixed. I'm not sure if that is a fact or not, it's just an assumption. Is there still a benefit to try to create the soundstage? When I close my eyes, will the speakers still seem to disappear? Thank you. Well, that's a really interesting question because I see the basis of it. If we imagine that soundstage is the recreation of live music in an acoustic space, such as classical music, then it only makes sense that if I set that up, my speakers disappear, I see behind them this great soundstage of music that recreates the soundstage that was there when the classical musicians were playing, and then I go to a multi-track studio and I put a microphone here and here and here. You really don't have a soundstage, right? And when you mix all of that, how would it make a soundstage? Well, the answer is yes, it should have a soundstage, and yes, it should too disappear. And only the very worst recordings don't. And if you have your system set up right, you will get a soundstage regardless of the kind of music. So I'll give you an example. I'm across the street over there, we're setting up Arnie Nudell's reference system, which is a gorgeous pair of speakers. And we're doing that in the office because we had just moved. So we're doing that in the office across the street in our old building. We're taking that project on because we're going to take those very speakers to the Rocky Mountain Audio Fest, and I want to have a chance to play with them, make sure everything's still working. Arnie wasn't the best at soldering stuff, so things are popping off, and anyway. And I'm finding all kinds of music that we want to play at the show. We're downloading the music from Qobuz, a streaming service, and then playing it back. And we have all kinds of rock music, alternative music, big synthesizer things, and one of the things that I look for out of the 50 or 60 tracks that we have is that very same thing, that sound staging thing. So on a proper mix, when somebody's actually cared enough about the mix, the mixing artist will create the sound stage. He'll put the singer in the middle, or whatever the lead instrument is. He'll have them far enough away from the microphones, or whatever tricks they use, to give them a little bit of space so they're not right up against the microphone like this, because that puts you right into the speaker and destroys the sound stage. So a good recording engineer and mixing artist will pull you away from the microphone a little bit, you're not so close, and then mix it such that it gives you a bit of space to work in, and that creates the soundstage. Some of the greatest soundstage I've got over there is not classical music. If you had a chance to go to Rocky Mountain, you will have heard many of those pieces that we have that are anything but classical. There are a lot of alternative music, and the soundstage is terrific. So yes, do not think for a moment that soundstage is restricted just to classical music. A good system, one that's set up properly with decent recordings, will always have a soundstage, and that soundstage will always mean that the speakers should and will disappear, the sound coming from behind them and enveloping the wall or whatever the space is between them. And so that when you shut off your lights, so you're not staring at those reminders that they're right there, those speakers, you should hear the music floating in space. And people should have positions and space and air around them, and they should be as if they're on a stage, even though they were not, even though they were recorded in a multi-track studio. It's an illusion. And once that illusion is created, your system should be able to reproduce it. And if it doesn't, you know, talk to us. We can help you with setup, with choices in your equipment, but know that it should be able to do that. Ours does, and yours can too. All right, thanks. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.